So we're going to look at a standard and actually analyze or deconstruct this standard for first grade. We're looking at 1OA1. So for this, you will need to look at pages 1 and 2 of your handout, and we're going to begin answering the questions listed there. So let's start with the domain. Our domain being our large group of standards, and here it's operations and algebraic thinking. That's where the OA coding comes from. The next question is the cluster heading. Here you'll see the cluster heading in bold represented by the letter A. A lot of our clusters go A, B, C, D, not much further than that. And the cluster here is represent and solve problems involving addition and subtraction. Now, if we go back to the actual language of the standard, remember we're doing 1OA1, the language of the standard is what we normally refer to. Here, use addition and subtraction within 20 to solve word problems involving situations of adding to, taking from, putting together, taking apart, and comparing with unknowns in all positions. For the next couple of questions, we're going to pull up our companion document. Your grade level facilitator will have shown you how to pull up the companion document. However, it is listed on page 1 of your handout from the Louisiana Believes website. So here I've pulled up the companion document, and I've scrolled down to about pages 3 to 5. Usually that's where we start our standards. And the OA standards are usually the first domain listed. So here we are with our domain, operations and algebraic thinking. We're in the cluster heading of A, and we're looking at the Louisiana standard 1OA1. Above this standard, you'll see some information surrounding the cluster of the solving problems of addition and subtraction. So let's get into the other questions that we really want to know. What is the key learning? That's a lot of words in our standard. So we can actually use this document to tell us a little bit more about our standard. Take some time to read through what you see here and pull out some of the key learning. Some of the key learning that I found was that this is actually an extension of this previous grade level standard of KOA-A2 and maybe even KOA-A1, which is solving addition and subtraction problems within 20. They also must work different additional problem types, and you'll see some of those problem types listed here and down here in this note. Students are also building their meanings of addition and subtraction. So if there are any additional strategies or specific strategies that are called on here, sometimes they'll come up in those little for examples within the standard verbiage. So here it says using objects, drawings, equations with a symbol for the unknown. And that symbol may be new for students. In kindergarten, it may have just been a square as a blank space, and now we might be using a symbol, maybe a question mark, okay? We also have already identified the prerequisite skills or standards. Remember, right now we're solving within 20, so in kindergarten they were solving within 10. And the component of rigor is also listed here. And you'll notice it is application, which is our highest level of rigor. So in step 1, we're reviewing our standards, and this is a clip from your end of the year rubric for first grade. We're going to look at the first 3 items here. So if you want to go ahead and have that pulled up, that's great. I'm going to pull up the end of the year rubric here. Remember, we have our Achieve the Core Coherence Map embedded, and our focus for the 10 days of instruction for summer intensive program is going to be around these green major focus standards. unless there's another note about a supporting or additional standard connecting to a future grade level major work standard. So if we look here, we can see numbers 1 and 2, items 1 and 2, both focus in on that standard we just deconstructed of 1OA-A1. And let's just map that out to give us an idea of what that looks like in future grade levels. So as you see on the board, our Achieve the Core Coherence map, 1OA-A1, shows us that previous requisite standard, KOA-A2, that we talked about when we deconstructed. We're also teaching some other operations and algebraic thinking standards at the same time or concurrently. And then we have some future standards, whether it be in our grade level or in second grade and beyond, that this actually connects to. So you can see it goes all the way even into an additional cluster of 4th grade. So we want to make sure that we have mastery of this standard before moving into 2nd grade. So this would be a standard I would probably pull in when we begin mapping our instruction for those 10 days. Let's go back and look at that end of the year rubric. And let's look at item number 8. So with item number 8, you'll see that it is the standard of 1MDA02. That standard does show green and it does show a focus standard. But remember, we decided we were only going to really focus our efforts for July around the NBT and OA domains for 1st grade. So I wonder why we might consider focusing efforts on this item in standard. Well, if we map the standard, or if you read my note here, you get a little cheat. It connects to major work of 2nd grade. So although it's in a domain that we may not focus our efforts on in the 10 days, if you have a lot of students that miss that number 8 item and you want to bring this in, use your discretion and bring this in because it does connect to major cluster of 2nd grade. So let's look at the data. Here I've pulled some 1st grade data from an actual Caddo class, or actually it's a school. So I pulled the first 20 students at this school, and we're going to look at items 1 and 2. This is what you were asked to come with to this training. However, if this was not delivered to you on your campus, we're going to provide some time where you can do this. So I've pulled part of the matrix report for items 1 and 2, and I have my end of the year rubric pulled up. All I'm doing currently is identifying which students missed the problem. Well, it looks like item 1 was something that was open-ended, and the students got 3 points, 2 or 1. So if they're not green with the full 3 points, then I'm going to want to do some acceleration to get them to get all of 3 of those points. So when I look down my column, I'm going to identify anyone who is yellow or red and put them in my portion here that says students needing support. So the first student I see with yellow is NB, so I write NB. JC also will need some acceleration. Then I come to someone who's red, who got no points, KC, just identifying them right now, not assuming anything. I'm going to write AC over here. My boy BC got nothing, so we're putting him there. FC got nothing, putting him here. And we're going to continue through that way, just identifying which students missed the problem. So if you look at number 1, one of the questions we can ask is who needs acceleration? And out of our 20 students, 10 of them actually need acceleration for that first item. We can look at item number 2 and you can see it was much better. This was a multiple choice item, and out of these 20 students, only one of our students needs acceleration here. So we can ask ourselves, are there some whole group or large group concerns? And with item number 1, there are. So that might tell me my students are better with multiple choice when it comes to the same standard, and we might need to focus in more on some of those constructed response items. But we'll dig into that when we go through step 3 in reviewing student work. So now we're identifying the need, and we're actually looking at item number 1. We can go back to our deconstructed standard. So if you don't remember the level of rigor from this standard, look at pages 1 and 2 of your handout. But it was application. So that we're looking at application as the level of rigor. And if we think back to some of our proficiencies and looking at a word problem like this, we might actually decide that we're going to look at some strategic competence as well, because we were wondering if students actually know how to represent this problem. Abel has 9 apples. He gave 3 to Susan. Draw a picture to show how many apples Abel has now. We've got some real life examples from some of our Caddo students in 1st grade. This work isn't completely correct. We do have some drawings, which is one of the first things they were asked to do, to draw a picture. Here we have 6 apples drawn. Well, we know Abel had 9 apples and he gave 3 to Susan. So we can assume this student has some concept or some conceptual understanding around subtraction because they only drew 6. But we may need to get more understanding of them. So we may put this in front of them again rather than just putting them into an acceleration group. They may just have not decided to show us the full picture where Abel begins with 9 and we take 3 away. So we might put that person's work back in front of them to really identify what is needed. This student here gave us Abel's 9 apples and Susan's 3 apples. So we're kind of concerned about the strategic competence here. Do they know that they have to subtract? Or are they trying to add? Do they even understand that when it's asking how many he has now, that he's given some to Susan? So we might need to start here with just some conceptual understanding and giving them the verbiage to talk about 9 apples and taking 3 away, then bring them into that strategic competence where they can begin to apply what they know and represent it mathematically. For those of us who are working the summer intensive program in July, we can map out our 10 days of instruction. For those of you who are not working those 10 days, use this map as a 2-week acceleration/intervention time to plan for those first 2 weeks of school based on what you know about our first diagnostic. You can see here I'm kind of pushing in a lot of standards. If we're doing this for 2 weeks in our regular school year, we're not going to do this many standards. We may only focus on one standard for the week and then another standard for the week, or bring in some that are highly related. But because I want to get the biggest bang for my buck and we're focusing in on major domains, I'm actually going to go ahead and plan out to do that NBT session here. So I'm focusing in on standards NBT A1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. I'm also going to start bringing in some of those operations and algebraic thinking at the end of the first week, and then go back in week 2, and I'm going to bring in the next 3 that I felt worked well together, while always bringing in the fluency portion of 108 C6. Again, I go back to 1 NBT C4. I believe that's all around maybe applying some of these operations and algebraic thinking into another area. But all of these standards focus in first grade missions 1, 2, and 4. Those are the best materials to pull from when we're looking at rising our students and accelerating them for 2nd grade. We're going to look at some of the Accelerate materials that LDOE has provided us. Please keep in mind that they originally pushed these out in the spring of 2021. So these were meant for virtual learning. However, there is a team of teachers around the state that are working to get these revamped and pushed out for the beginning of the school year. So when you go to the landing page, as referenced on page 7 of your handout, you may not see Accelerate Materials for Module 1 or Mission 1. You'll also notice that much of it is around Eureka Math, but as we know, Zern is highly connected to Eureka Math. The intent of these lessons, if we're looking at teaching Mission 2, lessons 16 through 20, the intent of these lessons is to be used the week before as a tutoring portion or intervention for students who are struggling with the standards for this specific lesson. You'll see that there are slides for the tutor that give you the focus standards for the grade level content, but also any prerequisite standards these slides may give you. So basically what we've done with LDOE is provide you with every intervention material you need in one space. You're given hyperlinks to virtual manipulatives and Desmos activities, which we'll go over in the next video. You'll see that they offer fluencies and templates if needed. So this is set up very similar to Zern, where you get your fluency and then some word problems. And then we get into the concept development. And again, when you get to that concept development, you'll notice that it looks very similar to what you already do with Zern in your small group instruction and some of the materials that students see in their Zern digital platform. There are slides with notes for the tutor that give you the vignette or the script that you like to use when working through these slides. So the Desmos activities can be seen here in the Desmos platform. Again, reference page 7 in your handout for a quick link guide from LDOE to the Accelerate resources and setting up a Desmos activity page or account. Honestly, every time I clicked on one of their Desmos activities, it brought me straight to it, and because we are a Google Suite district, I was able to log in with my Google account and just keep going. These activities are great because they're very similar to Nearpod activities where students can write in the slides. So basically what our teachers who created these tutoring decks for us did was take that slide deck and then put some of the practice problems in these slides for Desmos. So it just gives me a math task. It allows me to write in here, and if I were on an interactive board, I could write and show my number bond, whatever needs to be done. And again, like in Nearpod, it gives you real-time student work so you can provide that immediate academic feedback. So we've got all these materials. How in the heck do we actually use them? Let's start with that map we made for our 2 weeks in July. I know that I'm gonna use 10A A1 as one of my standards that I'm going to accelerate. It's written right here. It's something we deconstructed. We looked at that assessment item. And so I'm gonna go to that scope and sequence year at a glance. For 21-22, you'll see, it shows up everywhere. So I can just pick a week that I want. I chose week 13 because I know that's where Mission 2 begins, and I know that LDOE's Accelerate materials are available for Mission 2. So I go into my second 9 weeks for week 13, 14, or 15, and I look at my Zern Mission 2, the lessons that are available. I can see the objectives, I see my standard, and I can go ahead and pick, where do I really want to focus my efforts in Zern? Are there some Accelerate lessons I can also utilize? And are there any other enrichment activities that I can bring in to accelerate those students?